I'm Jace Lacob, and you're listening to Masterpiece Studio. It's a bright and joyous day in the vibrant beachside resort, Sanditon. Inside Trafalgar House, celebration fills the air as Arthur, Mary, and Tom Parker gather round to present gifts to Georgiana Lambe on her 21st birthday. The heiress has reached the age of maturity, and her father's fortune and her long-sought independence are finally hers.
Many happy returns, Georgiana.
They were my mother's. I hope you like them.
Thank you. I shall wear them to my party on Saturday.
And of course, in line with your father's wishes, today you take possession of your inheritance.
But as we saw at the end of episode 1, Georgiana's hard-won wealth is not as secure as she and her benevolent Sanditon friends would have hoped.
It pains me to ruin your celebration. Honestly, it does. But I'm afraid what I have to give you cannot wait.
What is this?
I am hereby serving you with a writ, stating that I am the rightful heir to your father's fortune. I suggest you find yourself a lawyer.
Episode 3 opens with a shaken yet determined Georgiana Lambe on her way to a London courthouse, accompanied by her dear friends Charlotte Haywood and Mary Parker. Now, armed with the support of Samuel Colburn as her lawyer, Georgiana prepares to defend her right to the fortune her father left her, a fight that pits her tooth and nail against the unrelenting efforts of Charles Lockhart.
What are these letters if not proof of my father's love? I know who I am. Whatever Lockhart threatens, he will not win.
And I have every faith in your lawyer. Mr. Colburn is impressive indeed. We owe his brother our profound thanks.
As Georgiana gets ready for a potentially life-altering trial, actor Clarke joins us to discuss how Georgiana, now of age, maintains her agency as she navigates the hurdles and triumphs of adult life. And this week we are joined by Sanditon star Clarke. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
I cannot believe, Crystal, that it is season 3 that we are talking about. It was years ago at this point. I remember we sat down at the Beverly Hilton Hotel to talk about season 1. You came in with a bowl of cereal.
Did I have a bowl of cereal?
You had a bowl of cereal. I think we were your first interview of the day. It was super early in the morning, I remember.
I remember the chair. I remember the room. But, I don't remember the bowl of cereal.
You took the last few bites. It was like you were doing, a walk and eat because it was so early. And then, put the bowl down. And you were like, okay, I'm ready to go. We are talking about episode 3. It's the halfway point of the 3rd season, which to me marks a major turning point for Georgiana Lambe. So much of her story has been about her desire for agency as she reaches the age of maturity. And with this episode, she gets control over her fortune and her destiny. How did you approach this aspect of her story?
It's interesting because it's one of those situations where, at least for Georgiana, it's very much it's not what you expected it was going to be. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot. And for me as well, there was a lot that the character learns in court that raises so many questions for her, questions about her identity, questions about her understanding of her place in society still. There wasn't the expectation, at least from my point of view, I didn't know that was going to come either. I didn't know those questions were going to come. And I was very happy that those questions came as the actor because it adds so much nuance to, it's not even adds, but it dresses how much nuance there is in her story. And there is with yes, she comes into her fortune, but what are the other questions that come along with that? And while it means that she has autonomy in society, how much of it really helps her to define who she is?
I mean, there is this sense that Georgiana's race is on trial. She says at one point in episode 2,
why is this man to be believed over a woman of integrity? Is it because he's a white man? If so, how is this justice?
I mean, to me, that felt particularly timely and relevant to 2023 in the sense that so little has changed since the Regency, since a woman like Georgiana Lambe could be on trial for a fortune that is rightfully hers, only to have this white man come in and say, actually, no, that's mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think that like, she doesn't expect the best, obviously, but she's already dealt with her money being in the hands of a white man, like in the hands of the Parkers, in the hands of Sydney. And I think the added brutality of it is the way in which these questions are brought up, and like the defamation of her character and the defamation of like her mother's character as the way of trying to take from her or deem her unworthy. And I think that's like something that she somewhat had protection from up until this point. And it just like is absolutely shattering and shaking. But she like definitely stands there in that moment and is like, straight up like, oh, so why is it my mother's character and mine that's on question and not these men, and so on and so forth. And that is very much still
Mm-hmm.
that is very much still a a double standard. We deal with double standards very similar today.
It's almost like very little has changed.
Oh, I don't know. Do you think? I think a lot has changed, but there's also like, human beings will be human beings. Human beings are going to human being.
Human beings are going to human being. Exactly. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the point that, she was a ward of Sydney's and then the Parkers. And Georgiana really, she's shuttled between households. She's shuttled between countries. She has to face off against Charles Lockhart in court, who had previously betrayed and used her. But in that moment, she finally is free of these men and then in control of her own person, as you say, sort of for the first time in her life, only to then have further questions asked about her past, about her parentage, about who she actually is. I mean, in that respect, do you see this episode as a sort of victory moment for Georgiana, or is it sort of a muted victory where she doesn't quite yet realize, which we'll talk about more in a bit, but doesn't quite yet realize the damage that's actually been done?
It's definitely a muted victory. It's definitely it's a safety at first. And then very quickly it becomes almost a burden of so many unanswered questions and so much to figure out for herself. You know what? It's hard. It's hard to be an independent person, to do adulting. It's hard. We all know it's hard. It sounds cute at first when you're a kid to be like, oh, I've got my freedom and I can make choices for myself. And then when you start to really have to make those choices, that's where the true test comes. And I think we start to see that for her after the trial.
She delivers a pretty blistering testimony, the one you referenced a few minutes ago. I mean, why is it my mother and I, whose character is called into question, and not the men who have mistreated us? Which shifts the focus onto her father, onto Lockhart, and onto really the British Empire itself.
I'm barely 21. But I've known a lifetime's worth of judgment and betrayal. Yet, why is it my mother and I, whose character is called into question, and not the men who have mistreated us? I can only think my inheritance was a bid for absolution. So surely, my lord, to give that man my fortune would only compound the sin.
What did you feel was riding on this moment where she delivers this testimony, and how important was it to you that Georgiana speak truth to power here?
I think it's really important that in that moment she hasn't been overtaken by the shock of that moment, of the whole thing. Really, the whole goal is to silence her, is to beat her into submission, and she allows herself to be vulnerable and present for all of it without totally giving up. Like, she doesn't give up, and she She has the fire to defend herself.
I mean, I feel most of us in this situation would probably wilt under the
Yeah,
spotlight.
exactly. I think like it would be such a terrifying, such a scary position to be in. And like to be constantly having all of this crap thrown at you and having your character attacked and who you are attacked, like that's a lot. And she does not, like you say, she doesn't will. It gets to her, yeah, but it doesn't stop her.
Well, she's human, and human being's gonna human being. We know that. I mean, more than just Georgiana's fortune is at stake during this trial. Also, to me, hanging in the balance is sort of her sense of self. The bill of sale reveals that her mother was sold to another plantation owner by her father, which makes Georgiana question the entire relationship she had with her father. How
Mhm.
does this shift or shatter her sense of identity, of who she is and the foundation she thought she had for her life?
It's not great for Georgiana in the moment, but I personally love the shift. I think whatever her understanding of who she has been or her place in society up until this point, I mean, it's been on shaky foundation. She's a woman of color. Her father is a plantation owner. She, yes, is inheriting this massive amount of wealth, but she's still in a time and a place where she is seen as less than, where her options are very much limited. And I think she's not really had to deal with the nuance of those questions up until this point. Up until this point, it's been a missing of what was and a feeling of isolation. But she hasn't really had to deal with the nuances of, okay, yes, I'm a woman of color and I'm wealthy and awesome. That sets me apart and that's cool. And that means I can help people. But also, isn't it interesting that my money and my wealth and my privilege comes off the backs of other people suffering? The question of like, what was her parents' relationship? We don't know. We didn't know. And it wasn't a question that she had even thought to ask or question, you know? And I think it's where she really begins to like get to do the real work of understanding who she is, because everything, the surface is just taken away and she really has to begin to look at things. And I think that's great. And I was really excited about all of that, all of those things, those questions coming up as part of the story.
I mean, in an episode that is full of great moments for Georgiana, my favorite scene of this episode is actually the encounter between Georgiana and Mrs. Wheatley.
Miss Lamb, I just wanted to say how sorry I am.
Did you not hear? I won the case. My fortune remains mine.
I know, Mom, but I also know what you've lost.
Georgiana is so fantastic at using her armor to hold the world at a distance, and she's had to do that to survive. But this is one instance where I feel like her mask actually slips, and we get to see her pain in a very palpable way. How difficult was it to encapsulate a woman's lifetime of pain in a single expression? No dialogue, just an expression.
What a simple question. I mean, I don't know. I do it every day, I feel like. So it helps that that was like that moment between Georgiana and Mrs. Wheatley and like not having any other people of color around. Because I feel like it's like that thing, it's the thing where like you go someplace and you're like, oh my God, are there other Black people here? And you see them and it's a moment of like, yes, community. It's like a little bit of like belonging and like an I see you sort of thing. And this was an I see you, but in like a part of her that she did not want to have seen. And I think it kind of like, that's kind of the headspace that it put me in. Yeah, it's that I see you, but, like, when you don't wanna be seen, when you don't wanna be perceived, and she was perceived so hard.
No, she saw her.
She saw her.
She saw her. And it is this moment where it seems really quite touching and beautiful because they're both women of color, albeit from
Mhm.
very different backgrounds, but they're in a majority white society that has amassed their wealth through the sale of people who looked like them. They're the daughters of slaves. And it could be this rare moment of solidarity in this. But as you say, I see you. But Georgiana at that moment flinches. Like she really does not want to connect in that moment
No.
because she sees it.
Yeah, and it's because, like, Georgiana herself doesn't want to see that. She doesn't want to see that part. Those are really difficult questions that she will have to grapple with now, and she doesn't wanna have to deal with them.
Before this next question, a brief word from our sponsors. Ocean voyages, expeditions, river journeys. Viking is dedicated to bringing travelers closer to the destination, offering a small ship experience and a shore excursion in every port. Learn more at Viking.com. You and I have talked a lot about representation over the years since Sanditon started, and the parallel stories of slavery that Georgiana and Mrs. Wheatley share feel very vital in 2023. I mean, to you, was it essential that Sanditon should grapple with the after effects of slavery, with the sugar trade, without flinching away from it? That there should be a moment like this which is deeply uncomfortable for the participants and hopefully for people at home?
Yeah, 100%, and I felt like I understood, like, I really appreciated having the character as representation for the first season and whatnot, but, like, I think what I didn't want lost was everything that came along with that in terms of the nuances of it and, like, the fact that, she's a wealthy woman, so a wealthy woman of color, and while that sounds great, also, what's the negatives of that? Like, where did that money come from? How do you process that as being a person whose family's wealth was amassed from slavery? Like, how do you process that? Even just mentioning it. And just like the fact that, like, okay, cool, Georgiana's treated this way, but do we have an example of how somebody who is of color, who does not have her wealth, would be treated? Like, how would she treat that person? Because she's not, like, super warm to Miss Wheatley. She's not like, "Oh, hey, girl, let's go hang out," you know? And I think that's something to be I really liked that moment for that fact because it alludes to her privilege and her possible disconnection from other people of color around her. Those are big questions. I think it's really interesting.
I mean, I think the following scene shows the weight of that. Georgiana prepares to leave Hayrick Park, and everyone is looking at her as though
Mhm.
society itself is sort of staring at her, this curiosity to be examined. And she is the only woman of color, other than a servant, in the room that is full
Mhm.
of white people.
Mhm.
To me, that sort of sums up or is maybe the best depiction of her sort of lived in experience, that this other woman who's there, this woman that she could connect with, as you say, there is such a chasm between them, between the privilege that Georgiana has, that she can't connect with this woman.
Mhm. Yeah. There's so much of their experience that is similar, and then so much of it that's different, and so much of Mrs. Wheatley's experience that Georgiana wouldn't understand.
So I want to unpack a couple of other things from this episode. Georgiana, she knows that Lord Harry Montrose is gay. She catches him kissing another man, but they come to this arrangement to get everyone off of their backs and pretend to be courting. Does this courtship of convenience help to get fortune hunters off of Georgiana's scent, even if Montrose is himself financially ruined? Does she see that he could also be a problem in that respect?
No, I don't think she sees him as, like, a threat in that respect because I don't know. I really love that scene where she comes to him after she sees him kissing his little fling on the beach. I love that moment between them of, like, I think there is definitely an understanding and there's a respect there that we don't get to explore too much, but like I don't think she sees him as a threat because she understands that like there are things that are probably more important to him than amassing her wealth, you know?
I feel like in that respect, she can find solidarity with someone from another marginalized group who's of her
Mhm.
same socioeconomic, perhaps, level
Yeah. Yeah.
in a way
Precisely.
that she can't with Mrs. Wheatley. I mean, my question as someone who loves the friendship between Georgiana and Arthur is, did it never occur to Georgiana to propose a similar scheme with Arthur Parker, who is not the marrying kind either, as it were?
No, I think it definitely occurred to her, but I don't think Arthur would ever let her do that. Like he just wouldn't. He wants her to be happy. He wants to be happy. Like he knows that that isn't the thing that would make her happiest.
I'm curious to the courtroom scenes in this where Georgiana comes face to face with Lockhart and he defames her. I mean, they're interesting to me because I can't think of any courtroom scenes in Jane Austen's work. And this episode becomes a legal drama in a way that the
Mhm.
show typically isn't. I mean, what did you make of these courtroom scenes, and did they feel different to you in terms of tone?
Oh, it was so weird. It's so weird. Like there's so many important moments and so much raised in those scenes that I love and I think are amazing and like really explain the direction Georgiana then goes into for the rest of the season. But like it was so bizarre to be filming like Jane Austen but in a courtroom. The only things that I could think of was like feeling like I should be in like, I don't know, 1776 or something. I don't know.
That's so weird.
Like I know it's very weird. It's very weird because I never put, like you said, I never put Jane Austen and Courtroom together. So you know what? We did something fresh and we did something new.
You did. Coming next season on Masterpiece, it's Jane Austen Mysteries as
Law and Order and Jane
Jane
Austen.
Austen. Oh my, I would watch that. I would watch
I
that.
would.
There is a rather beautiful scene between Georgiana and Otis in which she tells him about Lockhart, and she admits that she thinks about Otis every day. What does she make about Otis's return into her life, and why does she close herself off to the possibility of them reuniting romantically here?
Because she's smart, you know? She's smart and she's also been through it. She not just, Otis betraying her that first time around, but also, after all of this with Lockhart, and then even with like learning about her dad. Come on, daddy issues. Like she who she's supposed to trust. And yes, she knows him. They have history, but like for him to come back, there's a certain level of safety and a certain level of trust that has to be rebuilt. And I think that's all it is she has to see that before she feels comfortable letting him in again.
I mean, I love the fact that he posits a future in which she loses her fortune.
What if I should lose Otis? A young black woman with no money. What would I do? Who would I be?
You'd simply become Georgiana. You could live the life you choose, free from the fortune hunters and the gossip mongers. Free to marry someone who loves you for who you truly are.
What would that mean to her to lose her fortune? Can she see perhaps what she might gain, or that her fortune is a cage that is keeping her in check?
A gilded cage.
Oh,
Mm.
Crystal. The most gilded of cages.
A gilded cage, methinks. Very much so. Because yeah, it offers her it offers her freedoms and safeguards that she would not have otherwise. It definitely does. There's a block there in where she can go in terms of like defining herself. There's a block there in terms of there's still a block there in terms of what she can do and like who she might spend her time with, like Otis says. So it's very much a gilded cage. And I think even like, I don't think it's something that she even realize. It takes her a while to realize. Like, it's not something that she easily realizes or initially realizes, or, you know, even when Otis says it, I'm not sure it's something that she's like, it just doesn't seem like there would be any other option that makes sense, because survival is what's so important to her.
I mean, the fact that Otis has returned to the narrative after all of this time and played a pivotal role in Georgiana's trial against Lockhart makes me believe that maybe we haven't seen the last of him. Is there a possibility that Otis and Georgiana's story might not be done?
I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, won't we?
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Crystal Clarke, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Next time, Tom Parker and Rolly Price move forward with their hotel development in Sanditon's Old Town, despite Mary Parker's desire to preserve the neighborhood.
I promise I've not given up on my endeavours. I believe the old town can be saved.
I'm afraid we need rather more than your goodwill, Mrs. Parker.
When did you get this? I did not know.
That your husband has already sold out the land from under us.
Actor Kate Ashfield joins us Sunday, April 16th, to discuss Mary's quest to find her own voice after 3 seasons of propping up the dreams of her visionary husband. Masterpiece Studio is hosted by me, Jay Slaycobb, produced by Jack Pombriant, and edited by Robin Bissett. Elishaba Etup is our sound designer. The executive producer for Masterpiece is Suzanne Simpson.